This automatic Porsche without spark plugs is one of the best cars that you can buy for under 20 grand. Now that's a bold claim, but let me explain. Before the Cayenne was the Boxster. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. This is the 986 Boxster, the car that saved Porsche, because in the early 90s, Porsche sold reportedly like 4,000 cars in the whole USA or the whole world. Regardless, those two statistics are alarming. So they had the 986 ushered in order to bring in more people. Well, a few years later, they still needed some money, so they made something even more mainstream right at the time when SUVs started becoming popular. The Cayenne. It was introduced for the 2002 model year in Europe and shortly came to the US in 2003, and it was an instant success. There was the VR6, which was the base trim. Most of these were the base. Then came the S, which was an NAV8, which provided some level of Porsche power. At the top of the range was the Turbo and Turbo S, which were both 4.5 liter twin turbo V8s. I used to own a 2004 Cayenne Turbo, and that thing was quick. In the late 2000s, the facelift 957 dropped, which had a different exterior, but more importantly, in the last model year, they introduced the 3-liter diesel V6 only for Europe. In 2010, the 958 second or third generation Cayenne, depending on who you ask, dropped, and this thing was completely different from the ground up compared to the last two generations. Hence why I consider it the second generation. The engines were all a little bit similar. The V8s were bored out to a 4.8 liter, the VR6 was now a 3.6 liter, and the transmissions were all 8-speed automatics. With the exception of a few manual transmissions finding their ways into some VR6 equipped models, but that's a whole different video. And then there were two diesel models, mine being the Cayenne diesel, and the Cayenne S diesel, being a 4.2 liter V8 diesel that never came to the United States. Around this time, the diesel Cayenne finally reached US shores, and it quickly amassed a cult following. To think that if you had enough money, you could have a nice 991 and a practical diesel Cayenne as a stablemate, these things flew off the shelves for a diesel vehicle in the United States, which we all know are slow selling by default. Unfortunately, in 2015, as the facelift 958.2 dropped with the same diesel V6, the Dieselgate scandal hit, and Volkswagen cut back on diesel production for the US, and for the Cayenne, at least in all markets, the third generation never received a diesel. So with the exception of a very late 957 that left the 958 the only diesel Cayenne to exist. In the big 2025, there are 3 different types of people who drive diesel Cayennes. First one being a white-collar dad who has 2 random 911s of different vintages, like a 996 and like a 991, or a 993 and a nice 992 on order. Like, just, you never know, but there's 2 interesting spec 911s and a diesel Cayenne that he ordered, presumably new or CPO. The second demographic is Balkan. Any Balkan, general, could be a mom, could be a dad, could be a kid. Over there, over here, just Balkan. If you have Balkan blood in you, you cannot resist that diesel V6. Or Gen Z who tries too hard to look cool. No comment if I'm the third demographic, but let me tell you guys a story of how I came upon this very car. In the summer of 2023, I wrecked my F80 M3 and was left a little bit traumatized from that experience and wanted something less raw for the time being. Given my 32 grand budget from the insurance payout, I had some decent options such as an S213 E400 wagon. There were several of those I was looking at. There was one at CarMax and one at HGreg. There was also a G30 540D in Indiana, but due to some other circumstances, I just couldn't pick that one up, which really devastated me. Then I remembered that in 2021, I used to own a first generation Porsche Cayenne Turbo, which was a lovely car to me. Now, part of the reason I got rid of that car in the first place was the atrocious 10 miles per gallon and the fact that it felt a little bit old to daily drive in 2021. So naturally, I started looking at the second generation 958 Cayennes. I naturally still gravitated towards the turbos and the naturally aspirated GTSs, but given the transfer case issues those suffer from and the fact that they still get around the same fuel economy, I started straying away until I remembered that Porsche briefly offered a V6 TDI in the Cayenne stateside. Now, at the time, there were 2 of these things for sale local to me. There was a blue over gray one that I test drove out in Daytona, but it was a complete stripper spec. It had the base seats, no heated, no cooled, no Navi, no Bose, no sunroof. It was just barely a Cayenne. It was almost a Touareg or a Tiguan. It also had some gray interior, and I just knew that wasn't the car for me. And this was the other one for 2 more grand. A 2014 model with heated, cooled seats, sunroof, the multi-contour seats, Bose, and a host of other features that the other one lacked. And on top of all that, a brand new short block that had 50 miles on it from the local Porsche dealer down the street. And on top of that, allegedly, the lady who owned this thing before towed her GT3 Cup car to the track. So it had some weird lore to it. And that same day, I signed the papers and it was mine. Unfortunately, the honeymoon phase was cut short as mere days after purchase, the check engine light came on and the car went into limp mode for a diesel particulate filter code, which did initially scare me, but after doing some research and calling up the local Porsche dealership, I still had 3 months and 7,000 miles left of the Dieselgate extended warranty, which originally had a coverage of 10 years or 120,000 miles. So I booked an appointment for a few weeks in advance when I could get a loaner car. I did have other plans already and a beach trip to Clearwater, which was a 2-hour drive, and I didn't think it would be an issue given the fact that a few days prior to that, I went to Tampa and back for an airport pickup, but in fact, it did go as badly as it possibly could. As I was parking at the beach, the car lost all performance, and I chose not to alert my passengers until after our beach day, and I gaslit myself into thinking it would fix itself at the parking lot. It didn't. As we started driving away in the Florida summer thunderstorm, the car would not go above 20 miles an hour, and I was so desperate to just limp it to the nearest Porsche dealership 9 miles away. Came back the next day with a $120 U-Haul pickup truck and a trailer, and dropped it off at a local Porsche dealership. After a little back and forth with the dealership, it was determined that all of the damage from my little excursion and the whole exhaust system with the DPF was still covered under the Dieselgate warranty, and they sent me off in a Bose-less Macan loaner car, which what they said at the time was going to be a few weeks. Those weeks quickly turned into months as one of the DPF pipes was on infinite backorder, and Porsche corporate said they couldn't source one, and the dealership couldn't just throw in an aftermarket one or a used one because it wouldn't adhere to standards, and they couldn't really complete the warranty claim unless they closed out the whole ticket because they replaced the turbo already. So they just had to wait and fix it, which put me in a weird predicament. As a few weeks came by, I drove the loaner car a few thousand miles. They changed me out to another one, then another one, and then another one. I was known as the loaner man on TikTok, and some of my own friends even considered buying a used diesel Cayenne to get the quote-unquote Montez loaner method, which they coined. And at this point, it was December, and I was starting to get fed up because at the end of the day, I did want a diesel Porsche Cayenne to go around town with, tow, and modify, and magically a few weeks later, a DPF showed up, and it went in my car. Once again, my honeymoon was cut short as 200 miles later, the same exact message appeared on the dash saying that the DPF was clogged, and I just had enough. I went to the dealership. They said it was an AdBlue sensor, which conveniently wasn't covered under warranty. So I just took the car back, ordered a delete kit, which would in theory fix all the issues, and it did. Oh, and did that delete kit make the difference? I'm now going to put it in sport mode and just downshift to third gear. Oh, wow, that was a quick 35 to 65. It just goes. And straight line speed aside, the driving dynamics of this thing are really good considering the fact it is not a sporty Cayenne. Like there's the GTS, the Turbo S, those are the ones you expect something out of. The diesel still retains some of that Porsche DNA. You chuck it to the corners, it has really good communicative steering for the car it is, and the weight transfer is very predictable. And the all-wheel drive is very 50-50. It isn't rear bias, it isn't front bias, it's very all-wheel drive. You can really feel that the harder you push this thing through these regular tires I have on it. Let's be honest, guys, in a heavy diesel V6 SUV like this, driving dynamics are tertiary. It's all about that fuel economy. And with the delete kit, this thing shines even more than factory. Over the past 10,000 miles, I've averaged about 25.2 miles per gallon combined, city and highway, flooring it, driving it normally. Everything combined, almost 26 mpg US. And on a road trip, you can, for that mpg soars up to 33. And with the 26-gallon fuel tank that this thing has, the best that I've gotten is almost 800 miles on a tank. The fuel light came on 750 miles into a drive from Florida to Tennessee. One tank, all those states. Amazing. And let's not forget, this thing can tow. The diesel has a towing capacity of 7,700 pounds, which rivals all half-ton pickup trucks from its day. And I've put it to use. Towing two F10s, my old F10 M5 and my friend's 535D, my old Z3, my friend's NA Miata, my SLK, and other small trailers here and there. All while returning 22 miles per gallon at 75 miles per hour. You might make the argument saying, why not buy a Volkswagen Touareg TDI for half the price? Same platform and it can basically do the same things. And although you are right, the Porsche is just different in the way that it makes you feel. Aside from the aura, the interior is very distinct Porsche, from the early 991 steering wheel to the Porsche switchgear scattered throughout the interior, the Le Mans style start, the central tachometer with a red line of only 4,500 RPM, and the horizontal HVAC controls which started coming into style in early 2010s Porsches, starting with the Panamera. Now the question remains, should you buy a diesel Cayenne? Yes, under two conditions. You either delete and tune it, or you at least just tune it, because the Volkswagen Dieselgate tune that they put in these things after the fact sucks completely. It robs power. People say it's slower, it's sluggish. And after having mine being in limp mode constantly, all because of some DPF stuff, just get rid of that stuff. If you're in a state where they're really strict or you just don't want to fiddle with your car like that, just get yourself an X5 diesel, a Mercedes ML diesel, I mean, even a Lexus GX or something in a different car in the same wheelhouse. But if you want to change a few little things up, 100% this thing. It is a little bit better than the competition, but in ways that you can't really replicate out of an X5 or a Mercedes ML. At the same time, this is just my anecdotal evidence. Some people have had the same nightmare as me, and some people have had 300,000 miles on the stock system, so the choice is yours.